So yesterday was a bit of an interesting one-off for me. I hope you don't mind if I talk about it a little bit, but I gigged a Gibson Les Paul for the first time ever. So I'm 33. I bought a Les Paul earlier in the year, maybe a month or two ago, 2 or 3 months ago. I can't remember exactly, but I'd seen David Beebe had been chatting to me about buying a Les Paul, and we saw one on Facebook Marketplace, and it was basically quite a lot like this one, except prettier, but with a slim 60s neck, or whatever it's called. I really liked that guitar and kind of bonded with it before it went to live with him. And when I saw this one came up from a guy called James, who lives in Wales, I thought, right, I'll grab that and let's see if this one has any of the same magic. This one actually has the 50s neck, the slightly thicker neck, which kind of suits me anyway, which is fine. Doesn't look quite as pretty, but it'll do. So yesterday I had a gig and at Hugh Fernie Whittingstall's place, River Cottage. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's just down the road about 30 minutes. A really long driveway, which is difficult to get your cars down. It's a bit of a pain really. Could have spent more money on the drive, Hugh. That's my review. You want a Yelp review. Anyway, so played the gig with it, really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to talk about the things that I thought would be a problem that weren't, and things that I hadn't anticipated that would be a problem that were. So I just used my normal HX Stomp preset for this gig. I was using the HX Stomp XL, which I actually had a couple of moments where I pressed the wrong button because it was dark and catastrophe ensued. Luckily my clean tones are really clean and my driven tones are driven, so it didn't make too much difference. Also there's a compressor at the start of the preset. Switching over tonally from a Strat to a Les Paul, I only played the Les Paul on the gig, was fine. It just meant that the Les Paul had like a thicker tone mostly, you know, more mids, less highs. That was basically what it felt like playing it, which is not actually a bad thing for this live stuff, because oftentimes what I can find live is that things can be a little bit too plinky with clean tones, whereas the neck humbucker on this is quite dark. The one downside, I guess, was if I stayed on the neck humbucker whilst playing drive stuff, it kind of turns quite mushy quite quickly. The weight I thought might be an issue. This one weighs, I think, about £9.4 or something like that, 9.2, 9.4. It's not a heavy Les Paul, but it's also not a super light Les Paul. So it's probably like that medium weight. But I didn't actually really notice the weight of this guitar particularly, so that was good. I thought maybe it might be a thing where I'd start to notice after a while that the guitar was, it's only, you know, what, 1.5 pounds heavier than the normal guitars that I might use. I wondered if I would notice that, but actually I didn't. It was remaining super comfortable throughout, possibly thanks to Franklin straps, which are pretty comfortable straps. I guess if you had the guitar lower and all that sort of thing, you'd be using different muscles, and if you had a thinner strap, maybe it would bite into your shoulder a bit more. Equally, there are certainly Les Pauls that are a lot heavier than this. I think getting up towards £10 or £11 isn't super uncommon, in which case, you know, that is then going to be significantly heavier than a Strat. Let me know if you've ever had a boat anchor for a guitar. So those were the positives. The one slight negative is that the instinct of guitar for me involves kind of the volume knob being kind of here, and also controlling everything, whereas obviously, you know, on a Les Paul you've got bridge control here and a neck control here. The issue being that sometimes you could be, you know, I start a song in a clean tone and then I click to my drive tones. Oh, I haven't got it turned on. Or vice versa, you know, you start a tune in drive and then you go for your clean bit and you've not got it on. And necessarily those feel like they're in a different position on the guitar. So I think that's something to be aware of, and that you might want to spend time kind of checking through before you get to the gig, because that's something that caught me out a few times. The next thing that is, again, kind of backwards for me, obviously as a Strat player predominantly, I'm used to my pickup selector being down here. So, you know, being able to just chuck it to clean or chuck it to neck is quite usual. So a lot of my lead tones, I'd be using this bridge pickup, and I would jump to the neck humbucker for kind of clean tones. So again, that's a little thing where I'm having to kind of think a bit about the guitar, but not in a way that got too much in the way, I didn't think. It was still enjoyable. So I definitely think it was certainly enjoyable. The only other thing I could think of that kind of caught me out a little bit, if you try and do, say you're in G and you're bending for that high E, actually getting there, standing up with that, probably it's way more difficult than if you're on a Strat. Nothing else really caught me out, but I did a couple of times go for this and just nothing. It's really difficult to get a solid kind of connection if you're trying to play that 22nd fret bend. It's not really very available in the same way that it would be on an SG, for example. That would be like nothing. Or on a Strat, you know, you could kind of, you don't have a 22nd fret, but you can kind of bend up and kind of get near it. But I guess, you know, if you weren't thinking that 22nd fret was available, it would probably be okay, you know, to bend up and play around the 20th fret or 19th. But these last two frets are kind of, for me and the way my hand is, are not super available and not super consistent, just because of the size of the heel and that sort of stuff, which I guess you probably might have predicted might be an issue if you know about kind of the ergonomics of a Les Paul. But in general, I really enjoyed it, and I never really thought that I was going to gig this guitar. The one other thing that I was kind of worried about was that transporting a Les Paul, I've seen a headstock break happen on that Epiphone Casino, and it doesn't take much for it to happen. So I think the design is a bit of a potential nightmare. I did take the hard case. Normally for these kind of gigs, I would take two guitars in a Tom Ann backpack, but because of the nature of the Les Paul and its fragile nature, I do feel like you kind of have to take it in a hard case. Let me know if you've found softer cases or smaller cases that are less of an issue and can protect the guitar, but the actual case itself it fits in the car fine with all the PA and stuff, so that wasn't too much of a problem. But it's just a little bit of a worry for me, because obviously they're not cheap guitars, but they are delicate, so it's a bit of a thing where you're like, right, I need to be super careful with this and make sure I don't leave it leaned up or whatever, because these things fall down. But yeah, loved the gig, playing on the gig at least when we were actually playing, and no nasty surprises. It's kept its tune really well, which is not a thing that all Les Pauls do. It felt really cool to play, and yeah, just really I don't know if on a gig maybe this extra kind of thickness and more mids is maybe not a bad thing at all. I didn't find anything where I thought, oh, that doesn't work, which I think is slightly different to David Beebe's experience, which maybe he'll comment below what he found, because we said, you know, let's try and do a Les Paul gig for the first time. So this was new for both of us, and he was gigging his prettier Les Paul, I think his experience was slightly different to mine, but that was mine. I was super happy with it, and I think I'd do it again. I'll try and get some footage of the next one. It was a bit of a weird gig. I'll catch you in another video soon. Let me know your thoughts. Have you gigged a Les Paul? Maybe you've been someone who's gigged a Les Paul the whole time. That thickness, and you don't get any of the kind of potential ice picky stuff with a Strat. And what I find is that live is when you kind of can start to get some of that feeling, oh, that is a bit bright with a Strat. Whereas you don't get that with the Les Paul. Yeah. Thank you for stopping by. Hope you have a good Sunday, and I'll catch you in another video soon. Les.